everybody, and welcome to another episode of Around the Fern. This is Will Yafi. I'm the founder and CEO of TIDWIT, and today we have Ahmar Abbas, who is the CEO of Xtreme Labs. Hi, Ahmar. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Will.
Well, Ahmar, you and I basically have been talking for quite a while about what Xtreme Labs has been doing, but share a little bit with some of our audience what Xtreme Labs does and how, where you came from and how you see the future for Xtreme Labs.
Sure, thank you. So Xtreme Labs' goal in life is to help people upskill and reskill themselves. The problem that we are trying to solve is that a lot of the training and learning that's happening in the market these days is very knowledge-centric. So you can become an expert in a certain piece of technology by watching videos and reading different types of content, but what you don't get is actual skills. So you have the knowledge, but not necessarily the skills that are required to actually perform the function or the job at your place of employment. So what we found is that to overcome this skills gap, hands-on training becomes extremely critical. And we built a platform that essentially provides you hands-on digital training for about 12,000 different technology tasks and topics, and that number continues to increase every day. And our hope is that people that get to utilize the hands-on portion of learning will actually become better skilled to go out of the workforce and perform as expected.
But one of the cool things is that when we are out there, and enablement is clearly one of the major points of interest for a lot of the organizations, and medium, small, but clearly large. It's one of the top topics for them. Have you seen a trend for how organizations kind of are moving their enablement from being just your typical, kind of like theory-driven to being much more hands-on, labs-orientated?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we actually commissioned a study with one of the leading organizations that studies the training market. And what they are sort of indicating to us is that the interest in the hands-on part of training is continuing to increase. Almost 50 to 60% of the training that people are expected to do next year that is technology related will have some sort of hands-on component to it.
That's fascinating. So I want to kind of move into how you see, you and I have talked before about the reach of Xtreme Labs within organizations. And I want to kind of get your take on how you see Xtreme Labs ecosystem. Like, how do you define your organization's ecosystem?
Yeah.
Be it from upstream perspective or downstream perspective, how do you define that?
Yeah, I mean, first thing to understand about Xtreme Labs, this is pretty interesting and unique, and certainly I had not experienced it in the past, is that we sell B2B. So we're selling to other businesses. But the users of our product are not the people that we sell to. So we have a B2C user community, but we market B2B. So the people that, for example, might be calling in for support into our support center, we have no idea that they've actually purchased the product because we're really marketing it to the main kind of suppliers, and then they sort of roll it out.
So you have intermediaries that are actually spreading.
We have intermediaries, and we have marketplaces, we have aggregators that do a lot of sort of end user support and marketing. So that provides a pretty interesting dynamic to all the different players within our ecosystem. So for example, we have organizations that essentially are procuring the services from us, and we need to continually train them. We need to help them understand what the catalog looks like, what are the unique aspects of the catalog. And then we have instructors that may be part of these intermediaries, or they may be independent contractors that have been brought in to deliver the training utilizing our lab. So we need to have a set of relationships with them. They're not our customers, but we still need to sort of make sure that
So
they
they're
know and
kind of
understand.
non-transactional partners in that case.
Right.
Okay.
And then finally, we have the sort of the end users that we're utilizing our product, and again, they're not our customers, but we still need to maintain and manage them as if they were our customers.
So that raises an interesting question, because when we look at ecosystems and you know, when we look at the way we used to market, you know, and having these kinds of channels and kind of complex ecosystems, we used to do it in such a way because kind of like the way the products were launched were, I guess, more lengthy and we had more time. But increasingly the products, particularly what you guys are training on, are in and of themselves much more readily being produced and launched, etc. So what is, you know, your outlook in terms of this velocity of the market, and how is it affecting your delivery to your ecosystem in its different aspects?
Yeah, I think I like to always sort of answer this by giving an analogy, right? You know, in the past, if you were doing training, you might have built simulations and models. Typically, if you're doing, for example, a model for a heart that you could train people on, well, you build the model, it might take 9 months to build the model, but once you built it, your heart is really not going to change, right? The structure of the heart pretty much going to stay the same for the next 1,000, 2,000 years. So that sort of model of sort of building, training, and learning completely goes away when you come into the technology sphere. Especially now when you've got a lot of cloud-based technologies
that's constantly
that
changing.
are out there. So, you know, in certain cases, the training modules and the hands-on parts that we've built, every 2 or 3 days are getting modified.
Wow, every 2 or 3 days
Every
you get
2 or
a
3
velocity modification of some of the products.
Right.
Wow.
So
Okay.
what, you know, if for example I build a hands-on lab that has some type of scoring associated with it. Now if the underlying technology has changed, people can go take the assessment and they're going to fail. Because the assessment won't work because the underlying technology is actually
Changed.
changed. So the velocity is extremely rapid for our platform, and this is why we feel that we have a good position in the market because we can actually adapt to that platform. We've got.
And are you able to extend it to your ecosystem? Are you able to reach out and provide this velocity that you've managed to do with your platform downstream through to your partners and the channels that you guys are trying to, how have you managed that part?
So the way that we're managing it is that on the sort of inbound side, we're sort of automating the process of how we update the content.
Okay.
Right? And then automate the process of how we QA the content to make sure that it is actually going to work if somebody takes on those hands-on labs. And then on the downstream side, we're actually pushing all the changes out pretty much dynamically into the marketplaces so that the latest and greatest content is available for the people that buy it from that point onwards.
So you're connecting your core platform technology downstream through to your ecosystem so that whenever you make a change upstream, wherever you are, it automatically reflects itself downstream where they are.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And like I mentioned earlier, right, our ecosystem is also extending to the people that are producing and that might be producing the content as well.
Okay.
So we have to get that information in real time so we can pass it down to our sort of downstream people as well.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you about what are the major challenges that you see, Ahmar, when it comes to your ecosystem and how, you know, you clearly just explained how you're using technology in order to overcome this, but what challenges do you see when you look at your your overall ecosystem? What are some things that keep you up at night that you would like to see kind of resolved, and how do you think are the optimal ways of seeing it resolved?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest challenges and things that sort of keep me up at night are really, you know, are we on top of innovation so that we can keep delivering real-time content updates out into our ecosystem. The content and labs that we build obviously are constantly changing. They're getting complicated. They're getting very, very sophisticated, and that requires a lot of innovation on our end, so we can sort of push it out. To give you an example, we want to be able to deliver multilingual labs in around the world, right? And we want to be able to know who are going to be the best consumers for those multilingual or localized labs. We want to be able to pass that information out into our ecosystem so they can benefit from that. And that's not a simple problem to solve because you don't know who wants what at what time. And that's sort of where we struggle with and want to make sure that we have an optimal solution. We can push these things out very, very smoothly.
That's pretty cool. And when you and I have talked in the past, you've mentioned to me like the vision that you have is of being kind of like a what did you call it? Like not a kernel, you use like
the
a
Intel inside.
Intel inside of like labs and training. And I think that approach where you have a core element and then you're building around that technology and making it, I guess more easily consumable by your ecosystem is a pretty interesting challenge that you're I know you and your team have been working on.
Yeah.
One of the questions I also had to is when you look at some of your ecosystem out there, are they up to speed with where you guys are? And if you find that they're not, like what are some ways for you to be able to kind of get them as quickly as possible up to speed with where you guys are?
Yeah, right now, whether they're up to speed or not is not something that I can sort of capture from a set of leading indicators perspective, right? I can only sort of look at how we performed in a given month or in a given quarter and then determine sort of how engaged our ecosystem was. So I'm really operating with just sort of a lagging set of indicators. Right?
That's interesting. So, go ahead. Sorry.
And what we want to move is sort of be into a point where we have a set of leading indicators. We know sort of what we're pushing out or the way that we're interacting with our ecosystem is actually working. And then that we know will sort of downstream generate the appropriate responses, whether it's new sales for us or new consumption or increased consumption.
So speeding up the process of getting that feedback from the market of what products of yours and content is actually working, getting it from your ecosystem quicker so that basically you could make the necessary changes in time in order to get more effectiveness from the market. That's kind of what you see as a challenge that you're trying to overcome with some of your partners.
Exactly. But in addition to what you mentioned, sort of making sure that they have the awareness of what we have sort of to offer or what's new. Because again, as you mentioned earlier, the velocity of sort of what's happening in the marketplace is very, very high. And just to give you an example, this week at the Amazon Web Services reInvent conference, they released something like 35 new products, which brought their sort of overall portfolio up to 175 different products.
Wow.
And we are the ones that are sort of, we want to be the leader in making sure that anybody that wants to learn those products comes to us for the hands-on and training part of it, then we need to make sure that we know and can implement all these new sort of changes, exciting products, package them up, move them out into our ecosystem, and making sure that they know that all these things are now available.
Fascinating. So you're not only having to challenge your downstream, but you're also being challenged by the upstream who are launching more and more products that you have to be up to speed on, and kind of be on the leading edge on the or at least up front, because you're getting the technology before everybody else has gotten trained on it, and you're having to build all the content in order to be able to kind of launch it throughout your entire ecosystem.
Exactly.
It's quite a daunting challenge.
Exactly.
If you wanted to kind of project forward, so CEOs are always thinking about what's next, what's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years ahead. When it comes to how best to operate and interact with your ecosystem, what are some of those I guess forecasts that you have in your mind or goals that you would like to reach and that you think that you are capable of reaching within, let's say, if we're not talking about 5 years, because with cloud time it's much quicker than that, in the next 2 to 3 years? Where do you see that you really need to be able to reach within the next couple of years in order to maximize the utility of your ecosystem?
And I think the first thing is that we are adamant that we want to flip the model of how learning and skill development is currently happening. So instead of sort of people going through the chalk and talk model, or sometimes known as sage on stage model, we actually want them to sort of start with the learn and do model, and then if they're sort of having any problems, then refer to some other learning
The
resource.
chalk and talk stuff.
Chalk and talk stuff. So we're sort of actively sort of trying to figure out how do you sort of flip that model. We believe that model is more in line with and matches with the velocity of sort of how the new products are being developed. The market requires everybody to have updated skills, and we want to be able to give people the ability to sort of have that sort of really fast way of learning, but also in a safe environment, so they can fail as many times as they want as they're sort of going down the journey of learning these new technologies. So that's sort of our vision. That's what we want to get to.
Fascinating. And I think I've heard a lot from some of the GSIs in the marketplace, particularly those that don't have time for chalk and talk, but rather they want to get their engineers hands on as quickly as possible. I'm sure that those types of partners are going to be much more inclined to believe in this model than your traditional 30, 40-hour course that their people just don't have enough time for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it gives people a running start, right? They're already started and they just going to jump in midway, and then they can sort of fine-tune their skills because they're jumping right into the hands-on part of it. They may have existing experience that can easily translate and sort of give them a leg up into acquiring new sort of technology skills as well. So they're definitely sort of one of the key target opportunities for us in the future vision that we have.
Well, Ahmar, this was very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And I'd like to invite all the participants to check out Xtreme Labs' really interesting offerings online on www.xtremelabs.io. Thanks, Ahmar. Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
This was another episode of Around the Fern. I look forward to the next one. Thanks, guys.